What's up, guys? Hope everybody is on the river in a good way out there. This video, I just felt called to share it. It's kind of just like a beginning of an idea that I'm just gonna kind of unpack, which is, it's almost like I'm reminding myself of who I am when I make these videos, because I'm talking to this screen. So in some respects I'm talking to myself, but in other respects I understand how this format works of cyber exchange, and I have the understanding that this video can be watched. And so I have this imaginary but also just hypothetical understanding of who could potentially be watching this, so I'm speaking to you as well. And then that word reminding is like remembering. And the idea that I want to share here today is, it's like we're all just helping each other remember. I just found this cool guy on YouTube that I love his videos, and I love how he speaks, and I love his lens, really. I love the context that he's coming from and how he paints and angles the points that he's making. It's unique to him, and it helps me remember who I am. It helps me remember, you know, and then I see it and I'm like, oh man, that's a good idea for a video, or da-da-da. It makes me think of things in the same way that when I see an artist that I admire, they remind me of subtle components of who I am that maybe without their reminding, or without their help, I may not have remembered in such a specific way. And so this collective assistance in remembering that it seems like quite vividly we are all participating in, it brings it back to my thesis about FOMO, which FOMO is the baseline of not living your life. FOMO is the baseline of not being in tune with who Source has required you to be to this point. FOMO is, in a nutshell, having out-of-date software running, or just your whole operating system is just out of date, out of whack. You're not up to speed. You're missing out on who you are. You're missing out on what you are. You're missing out on how you are, how you do the things you are, etc., etc., etc. So remembering who you are from the help of all of our brothers and sisters has been for me this process of reminding me, man, that I don't want to miss out on nothing. That the only way that I can miss out on nothing is for me to be in alignment with my source, with my inner higher components, my highest perspective that is connected to God, that is connected to Source, and that is a general pointing at yoga and my union with Source. That can happen in a variety of ways, but that way that will be my way towards my union with my Source will be my way. Bruce's way was JKD. J-Man's way was the way of Christ, which J-Man's just a special guy. Siddhartha's way was the way of the Buddha. Adiyogi's way was yoga, etc., etc. And so all of those who are in their purpose and expressing their truth of who they are get it out of them. They don't keep it inside or write it in their journal or diary and then lock it up. They export it. It's in their terminal, it's in their system, and they click bounce. they click export, they get it out of their closed network, and they put it out into the all network, which the all network is the all network anyway. But it's almost like, to me and my lensing of it currently, the all network is reliant on individual expression, because it's the idea of I forgot the name of the study and all that, but there's this study where it's like they had monkeys in one continent in like captivity, and they were observing their behavioral patterns or whatever, and then they had another group of monkeys somewhere else, and they taught one group of monkeys how to do something, or they learned something. I forgot. I'm really bastardizing this entire reference, but basically the monkeys had no way of knowing what these other monkeys on this other continent were doing, and these new techniques of, I think they're washing food or something. I forgot. I just remember the sentiment, and the sentiment is that the other monkeys on the other continent, they learned it right after these other monkeys figured it out, and then I think somebody recorded it or whatever. But it's almost like, you know, they go all this time with no activity, and as soon as one of them found out, all of them found out. That's the idea. And so it's the idea, like, yeah, J-Man found what he found for us, but it's the idea of, would we know if it weren't for him? Like, my question is, would somebody else have found it out? And to me, it's, you know, it's a neither here nor there, and I don't want to get too lost in hypothetical rabbit holes of what could have and stuff like that, because it's nonsense. But I'm referring to a dynamic here, and that dynamic is, who's gonna do your life purpose if you don't do it? That's the idea. Nobody's gonna figure out the stuff that you are gonna figure out for you, and maybe you don't even have within you a sliver of a inclination to do something that's like for humanity or whatever. Maybe you have just like just some pipe dream of like being an entrepreneurial, you know, easy bake oven legend or something like that. But see, to me, and Gary Vee actually just hit me with this line the other day on a video, and he was like, the best way to be selfless is to be selfish. And you can poke holes in that sentiment. I also read this author Ayn Rand, her novel The Fountainhead. Her theory of altruism is pretty potent. That it's bullshit. That if you are moving through life in this way of like, oh, I gotta put others first, and to the point where you are almost only doing so because of your subconscious understanding that it will be looked upon in a good way in the eyes of society. The whole thing is basically based on this facade and lack of awareness within yourself that you're actually not even being selfless. You're just looking for approval. And whether that's approval in others' eyes, or whose eyes, or your mom or dad's eyes, or whoever, it's all BS. But if you're looking for approval in the Creator's eyes, if I am looking for the approval of the Creator, then I must find that which brings my deepest joy into sustainable reality, where the presence of now is my eternal dwelling place. For how I navigate the world is not based on anything in the world. And that's, you may have heard that sentiment before, be in the world, not of the world. And that's been a super helpful calibration for me in my journey of like, man, I have something to do here with my time. I would like to do something cool with it. I would like to do something with it. You know, Your mom drops you off at your friend's house for, you know, a play date, and you guys only got so much time. So immediately you look at each other and you say, what are we gonna do? Well, let's build a fort. Well, let's go outside. Whatever, the decisions are made and you start moving towards it, but it's all based on desires. Yoga calibrates these desires, and yeah, the idea of becoming desireless is another thing. We're not talking about that right now. But we are talking about remembering. We're talking about remembering who we really are in truth. In oneness. What is truth? Well, that we are all one. And so if we are in our full expression as truth, then we just turn into the flower and we bud. But then somebody else is just being themselves, and they're being a bee, and now our flower gives them that which is required for them to be themselves. And so this points at what we're pointing at here, which is remembering who we really are as contingent on others remembering who they are. That we can't remember who we are without each other. And so, does remembering who you are incorporate others in your actual private process? That's the thing that Course in Miracles sheds an interesting light on, is that there's really no private thoughts at all. You may have your weird, fucked up, twisted thoughts going on in your head, and you may have crazy judgment and seen some really twisted movies or porn in your life, and so you think that your thoughts are private, but they're not. Those thoughts are out there happening in a similar way for someone else. However, your lensing is very particular. I find that lensing is unique and specific to the individual, that there are no two lenses alike. There are no two experiences alike, which even increases the individuality of the lenses. But thoughts, it's almost like we're just, let's not go into who's hearing and listening to the thoughts within us. Let's not even get into that. But if we remember who we are, it's beyond our thoughts. It's beyond what we think we should do with our time. But what it is in line with is our deepest bliss. Our deepest bliss and our deepest joy when calibrated. Because you may think your deepest bliss and deepest joy is, playing video games and eating cereal. That's my private context. But it's not my deepest joy. It may add some type of shading into my deepest joy, but it in itself is not my dharma. And that's kind of these yoga concepts that have been fine-tuning and calibrating me and my remembrance. But I want to come back to this idea of, like, if I'm not in my expression, it may not give somebody else who's looking for their expression the specific reference point that they needed to be their expression, or to express their truth. I know that that's the case for me, because if Scott Mescudi didn't put out Man on the Moon, if Scott Mescudi didn't put out A Kid Named Cudi, I for sure wouldn't be here. And Cudi wouldn't have done that if it weren't for Ye. Or at least I probably wouldn't have heard of it if it weren't for Ye. Think about how many of us, well, now I'm speaking to the hip-hop community, so if you don't participate in the hip-hop community, then this is not for you, but think about how many of us, our expressions and our truth is contingent on Ye's expression, or at least since what we've witnessed him express. But then he wouldn't have been able to get without Jay. So, a little quick hip-hop rabbit hole, but it's like, I found this guy on YouTube that I was talking about, and I forgot his name, but I just found him, but I'm gonna keep looking back at him. I'll probably talk about him on this channel at some point, because I love lenses. I love others' lenses, and I've recognized that my lens is really just my lens, but there's other lenses out there that I kind of almost, well, it's not that I like them better than my lens, but I just appreciate what their lens does, because my lens does something different. My lens angles at the light differently, receives the light differently. And then one's ability to express that is contingent on craft and other things. But we're all helping each other remember who we really are in truth. As we are connected to our source that is referred to as God, that is referred to as a process, as yoga, as union. You define your purpose, you define your trajectory towards that purpose, then you're in your being. You're being your purpose. You're being yourself, the one self, the higher self, and you're not contingent on your trauma, which is only sustained by your ego. Now, without getting too much into ego and trauma and stuff, sometimes still living in and expressing your trauma and your ego can somehow act as this portal for you to get that shit out of your system, move on with it, and start over, die, have an ego death. I think there's something to be said about how the world looks at public ego deaths now. That when somebody really has a really truly mind-blowing performance as an actor, and we watch them on screen pretty much die, it's cathartic for them and us. If you share those tears with that human being as they died, they gave us permission to have cathartic release that gives stuff that's in us opportunity to move and get exported in a way that, again, if they hadn't done it, would we or would we not be able to do it? I don't know. Excuse me. So, yeah, it's all cathartic. We're all remembering, and we're all helping each other remember. But are you doing your part is the idea. I've been looking for the past hour before I started this video. I've been looking for motivation. I was watching Abraham Hicks. I was looking at because I have a couple projects that I'm working on, and I've just been at steps of them for a minute. I just put out an album, which feels amazing, but now there's other components to making that thing work as an execution. So it's good for you. You crossed one finish line. That's just one chapter of this marathon. Keep it moving, grab a water, and don't stop. And so, are you doing your part? Are you expressing your truth, or is it unexpressed? Are you clogged up right here? How are your nadis functioning? Because if they are, then you should be in expression. Even if not vocally, you can vocalize non-vocally as a concept. That may be another video entirely, but expressing could just be letting that shit come out your eye ducts, your tear ducts. It's still expressing, and maybe humming and moaning, maybe with a loved one. Maybe you are in a co-expression with another, where you're the introvert and they're the extroverted component in the dual-partied expression. To be a part of something bigger than yourself, as a project or a team or a company, a business, etc., that can be an expression. Not everybody's supposed to be, I think Gary Vee said this too, you may not be the CEO, but you'd be a killer number 5 guy at a big company or whatever. But if you can let go of this idea of who you think you are, then you may find that format of your truest form and expression. So yeah. Will anyone know your truth? Or are you going to swallow it and take it with you to the grave? Or will you find a way to release your pain, release your trauma, and transmute through alchemy your process of darkness, your just darkness? Can you transmute that into higher frequency? And so yeah, you don't got to stand on top of a mountain and shout it. You don't have to let anybody see your journal or your diary. But what's happening with your experience? And do you feel fulfilled? Because if you do, then good for you. But if you don't, then why? Why don't you feel fulfilled? To feel fully expressed, that's a pretty great thing. I don't see many dogs that aren't fully expressed. I've seen some, and they walk with their tails behind their legs, and they have trauma all over them. You walk in the room and they cower. They've experienced really messed up abuse. Like an owner hit them when they like barked for treats, or barked because they heard a noise at the door. And the owner, you know, whatever. And so now that dog is broken. But that's not their truth. Their truth is not to be broken. Their truth is an infinite being. But this world has ways of suppressing that truth. And that's just how the monopoly board is set up. Do not pass go, do not collect. If you're not expressing your truth, nobody's gonna do it for you, and it will go to your grave with you. And it's not even your truth. It's your ancestors' truth. It's your community's truth. It's your family's truth. It's your friend's truth. You have truth within you. And it doesn't need to be sent out to the world, but it may need to be sent out to that one human being, that one loved one, that one old relationship, whatever it is. Because we are all seeking fulfillment. And full expression is a possible reality for all of us. Full reflectivity. If the one is the sun, and we are as the moon reflecting that light, our surface health depends on the amount of that light that we can reflect. So are your craters on your surface preventing that light from coming off of you and being something new, being something else? Or are you a dense piece of darkness in this slivered shadow realm that only takes? How do you know what that sounds like? You know anybody who just watches other people? Who only plays video games, who only watches shows, they consume other people's ideas, they consume other people's opinions. They don't really have much exporting ever. Even how they speak and the jokes they tell and the things they communicate aren't really even them either. They're just recycles. They're recycled stuff from others as a mimic. No one can express your truth for you. And you won't feel fulfilled unless you express your truth. So what are the steps that you could take right now moving forward to expressing that truth and feeling fulfilled? I don't know. But may the force be with you in your process of discovering that.